What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Monument Auto, and welcome to the new year. Today I'm going to recap another year of owning the ML63 and go over a couple things that are still wrong with it, things I want to fix, and then also discuss all the mods and the upgrades that I want to do to it over the next year or so in 2023. So stay tuned and let's get started. All right, first things first, we are at 148,551 miles with no lights on the dash except for this gas light, which I'll be addressing today. And over the last year, the car has been great overall. There was one major repair about 6 months ago, which I made a video about, trying to track down a vacuum leak, a lean code for the engine, which ended up being a loose brake booster hose. So go check out my other video on that. But overall, after another year of ownership, this car has been surprisingly, I guess, reliable. No major repairs other than the one I just mentioned, and just normal maintenance has kept this thing going. So let's take it for a spin, and I'll give you all a breakdown of what is still wrong with it, and then I want to talk about all the modifications and upgrades that I want to do as well. All right, so driving the ML63 for one additional year. I'm at 3 years total of ownership, actually a little bit over 3 years, and this is going to be my third kind of annual recap video of owning this vehicle. So let's talk about a couple things that are still wrong with the car. The first is that I never fully repaired the right fender flare where it was involved in an accident, 3+ years ago before I bought it. And so there's been a little bit of kind of body damage on that front right fender, and I really want to address it this year. Very minor, but just kind of a thing I've been putting off for a long time. The next thing, again, I've just been putting off because it kind of works, is the rear hatch or the tailgate. So it's got the infamous electric or power assist tailgate, and the actual exterior latch still gets stuck. So you have to kind of click it open and the tailgate will open, but then you have to manually push that latch back to the neutral position, otherwise it won't close. The other thing is that the power tailgate recently has not gone all the way up, and I'm not sure if that's an issue of the actual electronics kind of wearing out, or if it's some setting that I'm not able to kind of adjust or not figure out how to adjust. The next thing is, in these colder months, the transmission still shifts a little abruptly from second to third gear when it's cold. And if you've seen my other video, I've taken the conductor plate down and cleaned the transmission control unit and kind of cleaned the valve bodies that control the shifting, and replaced the check balls, everything, and replaced the fluid, obviously, and it improved it, but the transmission still shifts a little abruptly from second to third gear when it's cold. Every other gear has been totally fine, and like I said, once it's warm it's fine, but for whatever reason that second to third when it's cold is still a little bit harsh. Beyond that, there's no real issues with the car. It runs totally fine. It shifts totally fine, at least once it's warmed up. Main issue, there's a little bit of creakiness going on in the front suspension that I haven't figured out yet. It's either the shocks, because I believe these are still original shocks for this vehicle, and like I said, we're almost at 150,000 miles. The rear shocks have been replaced prior to me owning it, and so I think those are fine, but the front shocks might need to be replaced, and there's an intermittent kind of mild clunk in the front end that might be a ball joint. That's what it sounds like to me anyway. So I haven't taken the time to truly diagnose these, but that's another item to the list over the next couple months to get this car to 100%. All right, so now that we've talked about all the things that I still want to improve and fix on this car, Let's talk about a couple of the modifications and upgrades that I want to do. So, ever since I've owned this car, I've been researching modifications, and I think the downside of owning a Mercedes AMG is that all these modifications are expensive. Compared to modifying a Honda or a Toyota or something like that, where there's such mass-produced aftermarket parts, you only have a few options to modify an older AMG like this. And so at the top of my list is long tube headers, which basically you have, I'd say, maybe 3 options to choose from, and they're all over $3,500. Personally, I'd like to go with the Weisstech Engineering long tube headers, and those are about $5,000 right now. And it's very hard to find these parts used as well, because people hold on to them and they're relatively rare. And so even when these do come up, I think they go pretty quickly to another buyer, and so you really have to be on the lookout, and so far I haven't found any used options for these long tube headers. And then what also makes the long tube headers tricky is that you have to pair it with a new ECU tune. So right now I have a stage 1 Weisstech ECU tune that gives you maybe like 26 horsepower, I think they say, plus a couple other things. But with the race exhaust or the long tube headers, you'd have to upgrade the ECU tune as well, and that's another $1,000. So we're talking at least $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 if you pay someone else to install it, just for long tube headers. So it's going to be a challenge for me to get those. I don't have the money to just toss $6,000 at my car, but that is at the top of my list. Especially with this naturally aspirated engine, opening up the exhaust through the long tube headers is really what can promote some additional power without doing, a supercharger, for instance. And that being said, a supercharger is definitely on my list of desirable modifications, but the Weisstech supercharger is, like $11,000 or $12,000, I think, for the stage 1 or stage 2 supercharger. And that would come with, again, additional installation costs, and I don't think I would want to strap a $10,000+ supercharger system onto an engine with 150,000 miles without also doing like a top-end rebuild of the camshafts, which have a little bit of wear on them, and the lifters, which actually looked pretty good, but could replace them with the Black Series, the SLS Black Series lifters. And I'd want to 100% make sure that the head gasket or the head bolts have been updated, because I still haven't verified that, but no issues with that so far. But basically I'd do a whole top engine rebuild before I would strap a supercharger on anyway. So a supercharger is probably $15,000 away at this point. And to have the supercharger, you need the long tube headers. So we're talking $20,000+ to do long tube headers, supercharger, and top end rebuild, just to be safe. And then you still have to ask yourself, well, is that worth it then? I could buy another used AMG car for $25,000, but it wouldn't be unique, I think is the point. I know part of what we all love about modifying our vehicles is that you make it very personal and very unique and kind of one of a kind. And part of the fun of it is the experience of getting to choose exactly what you want to add to your car and the process of installing it, whether you do it yourself or not. And so, while yes, I could buy another probably faster, nicer, or newer car for $25,000, it wouldn't be as special. So the goal is still to modify all this myself at some point down the line. All right, so now that we're all fueled up, let's keep talking about other modifications I've considered. The next on the list is coilovers, especially given that slightly creaky front end suspension, and I'm anticipating needing new front shocks or struts. It's much cheaper to do a coilover system instead of replacing the adaptive dampening air suspension shock unit. So there are a couple brands that I've looked at, like Seika, and they sell them for about $2,200. There's a couple brands that I've looked at, and they're all about $1,000 to $2,000 for all four. And then you'd have adjustable height, adjustable dampening, and much less maintenance or potential issues with airbags, maybe leaking or the air compressor going out, or electrical issues, because it's just a normal spring and shock combo. But I am definitely considering it. It would again make the vehicle a little unique, but you lose out on some features like the adaptive dampening, which I don't really notice that much anyway. And you would lose out on the ability to raise the car up if you do any sort of off-roading, which I don't do anyway. And to be honest, I'd rather it just sit at one level that I like the performance and the look of, rather than have all these other features that I don't really use. So, let me know your thoughts on coilovers for this vehicle in the comments. Alright, let's put this into manual mode and sport suspension, which again, I don't really feel any difference, but maybe it's because the shocks are worn out. And let's do a quick pull here. So I'm currently going 30. We'll downshift once to fourth gear, third gear, and second gear. We're at 4,000 RPM. And that was 75 miles an hour and bounced off the limiter there at 7,000 RPMs. Oh my gosh, it's so fun. Oh, that exhaust, that engine note is amazing. There's been some hate on the burble tune, as they call it, or the crackles and pops, but I love it. I don't know about you guys, but hearing that exhaust note kind of just crackle after the end of a long pull, mine's not like a two-step, like super loud gunshot level noise. It's kind of a low to moderate burble, but it's super fun. Let me know what you think in the comments. And now we're on a very twisty back road. Let's pick up a little speed if there's no one coming. And I'm wondering if coilovers would also help the handling, lower the center of gravity a little bit, and probably stiffen it up. I've heard that bags are notoriously kind of floaty, unless you have really fancy kind of like torsion bars that are electronically controlled to help keep the car level, which this does not have. It has a regular kind of sway bar. So I'm thinking that it would feel a little less like a big heavy SUV if I put the coilovers in and dropped it down an inch or so. So anyway, that's about all my thoughts on this vehicle for now. If you have anything else you'd like me to address, leave a comment and I'll try to get to it. And let me know what you think about the modifications and the pros and cons of air suspension versus coilovers, and modifying this car with long tube headers and potentially a supercharger, and doing the top end rebuild with the camshafts and the lifters and the head bolts versus just buying something else. So anyway, I think that'll do it for this video. Oh, there's one more thing I wanted to mention. I wanted to thank every one of you for watching these videos. My channel recently, over the last couple weeks or so, just hit 100,000 total channel views, which I know is pretty small for a typical YouTube channel, but I just do this for fun and in my spare time. So hopefully you've found some enjoyment and some useful tips or knowledge from this. And I'm looking forward to 2023 and continuing making some videos here and there on the ML63. So Happy New Year and stay tuned. Thanks for watching.